Welcome back to the Morning Juice. I'm your host, Juice. Today, my guest is one of my best friends and my boss, Tyler Bell. How you doing, my boy?
Doing good, my girl. What's up, son? Represent.
Represent. Tyler's going to come on and tell his story today. He's going to talk about some of the recovery world stuff that he's involved in. And so let's dive in.
All right, we're diving in. I'm Tyler. I'm a person in recovery. I like to first just say a few preliminary things. Is God still working on me? And I cuss a lot. I will do my best, but I'm not going to change who I am for anybody.
Cuss away.
All right, fuck. Let's just get it out.
Get it out of there.
Just get it out
Get that
there.
first fuck out of there.
The other thing I want to say, too, is just out of respect for people that have been in my life and have seen this from a different lens, all the terrible things and all the good things that have happened. This is me telling my story publicly for one of the first times outside of a anonymous fellowship. So this is my timeline and the way that I viewed it. You might view it completely different, and if you do, that's okay, but this is just my experience, and I'm going to share it the best way that I can.
Okay.
So I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. Struggle with mental health. I've got eating disorder tendencies, and I've been in recovery for 11 years. And I'm grateful for that. I'm crying already.
Congratulations on 11 years, my dog.
Thank you. On Valentine's Day, we'll get there. But I'm going to start out when I was an infant little baby. So I woke up and I was in this warm, dark, wet place, and it was my mom. I'm just kidding. You can cut that part.
Don't cut it. Don't cut it.
No, so I really don't remember too much of my childhood, right? But I do have a couple of things that stick out significantly that I remember that I feel like are an important part of my story because it helped kind of mold me and develop me into the person that I became.
Right.
And then experiences that led me to who I am now. But I had a really good life growing up. My mom, she did her best with what she had, and we never went without. She traveled a lot. She was gone all the time, but we never had to want for anything. I grew up with a mom and a stepdad who I grew up at first thinking and believing that he was my father, and later found out that he wasn't, but that he had adopted me, which is why I have the last name Bell. And so that's kind of where things start for me. I'll just start there. Outside of it being a good childhood, there's not really much to say. But one of the biggest memories that I think are impactful to my story was I was probably somewhere around the age of 7 or 8 years old. And I have a godmother, Avis, who is super important in my story too, because she helped save my life. I'm such a cry. Recovery makes you soft. It makes you cry, maybe not soft. But my granny, her mother was in the hospital at the time. And so me and my mom and my brother all went to the hospital. And if I remember correctly, it was just like a back surgery type deal. It wasn't nothing crazy. But while we were there, again, just one of those moments that were impactful to me. My mom took us down to the little snack room area with the vending machines and the tables and some coffee and stuff. And for whatever reason, I remember a foreign looking man reading a newspaper, drinking coffee. I don't know if that happened or not the way that I remember it, but that's how it happened. Mom fact checked me. Didn't think anything about it. I just remember him being there. And then on the way home that night, she proceeded to tell us that strange man that I remember, that foreign man, was my actual real father. And at this point, remember, I'd grown up, 7 or 8 years of my life thinking that my real father was this other guy. And she showed us pictures and explained the story that essentially when she was in nursing school, she had started dating this guy and obviously got pregnant. She found out she was pregnant with twins, and she essentially told him that if you don't sign the birth certificate, then you're never going to be a part of their lives. His response was something along the lines of, in his country, from where he's from, they tell you who you marry. They tell you who you have kids with. It's that type of environment. And so he was afraid that if his family found out about us or the situation, that we could be in danger.
Right.
Now, I don't know how true that is, right? Or what all that, but that was my story. And I believe a little bit of that, and I'll tell you why a little bit later on. But that was my first, I guess, feeling of abandonment.
Right.
Of rejection, which is where a lot of my addiction tendencies, codependency stuff stems from, is that feeling of rejection, that feeling of not being good enough, that feeling of being alone, of being unloved, of being lied to, all those things, right? And to find that out at such an early age when I have no idea on how to manage my emotions, right? Like, let the games begin. And so then I have these experiences in school where I'm always an attention seeker because I need that validation to feel okay in here.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that validation. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just wired different. I never have, and I still struggle with it today. Even though I know to my core I have people that love me, I can be in a. This is the crazy thing about ego is I can walk into a room, whether it be of recovery or normal people, and I can feel better than all of them and not good enough at the same damn time.
I agree. I mean, I feel the same way.
Yeah. Anyways, in school, always in trouble, always acting out. I was actually kicked out of elementary school, middle school, and high school, and alternative school, all because of fighting. I was always the one to throw the first punch. I didn't like to run my mouth because I felt like I had to prove myself. I was always the smallest guy. See my little feet dangling on the floor there? Can't touch the floor. And so I always felt like I had to prove myself, and so fighting became a thing. I don't remember the first time that I drank, but I remember the first time that I got drunk. And I was with my best friend at the time, Doug Duda, and we were his brother was like the epitome of cool, right? He was a bartender. We were just starting out in high schoolish years. He had the man cave with all the liquor bottles,
Right,
and
right.
the colored roller papers for joints with images on them, and had all the stuff that we needed to have a good time. And I had started dabbling in smoking weed early on, and cigarettes, and stealing, and doing all the, was a menace to society for such a long time. We were just drinking a few beers out of his mom's fridge, taking a few shots of the pink stuff, a few shots of the blue stuff, just the fun stuff. And we were talking to our girlfriends on the phone at the time, and we were watching. I could just feel being in the room right now. We were watching an old like 70s type of porn in the background that we had probably taken from his mom on VHS. And we were talking to our girlfriends on the phone, and I just remember this feeling from head to toe just come over me, bro, that flush feeling. And then as I do, started giggling like a little schoolgirl, and it was uncontrollable. He was like, dude, stop. Like, you're going to get us in trouble. You're going to get us caught. And, like, I couldn't stop. And then, of course, the vomiting and the blacking out and all that. But that just made me want more.
Right.
Because that feeling I had was this overwhelming feeling of, like, peace and contentment. And I'm okay.
Yeah.
And happiness and
Right.
joy, right? There was no fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. There was fucking porn and feeling great.
Right.
It was awesome. I'm going to do this forever.
70s
And
porn, feeling great.
and so that kind of that's where it started for me. And again, I don't remember the first time I drank, but I remember the first time that I got that feeling, and I chased that feeling for a long time. And a lot of old timers in the room will say, "Oh, I wish I would have got it so young." And I always try to crack back at them. Well, you might have made it in here quicker if you didn't spill so much, and stuff like that. But like ultimately, I did a lot of damage in the short amount of time that I used. Like I said, I was kicked out of all those schools, played a big part in my mom losing her home. I became a ward of the state when I was 16 years old. When I was, I'm kind of all over the place, but just to touch on a few more important things is, because I was living that lifestyle, I decided that I needed to sell some habits so that I could keep my habit going.
Right.
And this is 16 years old. I was driving at the time, and I thought I was a kingpin, but really I was the lower middle of the lower middleman. My dumb ass had gone to my guy to re-up on a bunch of weed, and I had names written on all the bags to everybody that I was going to sell because I'm a smart drug dealer, right? And while I was there, my girlfriend at the time, who had been dating for 3 years or so, mostly through high school, had called me with this other guy, and he was talking stuff and wanted to fight. And my dealer at the time got on the phone and started talking smack on my behalf and was like, "He's on the way." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on the way." So now I'm going to fight this cat, right? And I just got all this weed. I don't remember how much it was in my truck. And I went, and it was a cul-de-sac at a playground in a really, at the time, was a higher fluting neighborhood in Hermitage, Mount Juliet area. And when I pulled in, it was just a girl and maybe a friend. And so I had a car behind me full of my friends, and I had 2 people laying in the bed of my truck and another person to the right of me in my truck. And we went to fight. Like, we went to handle business. That was my life. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll at 16 years old, and that's not a joke.
Right.
We would show up at the lake 4 deep to fight 6 people just for fun. We would sling open the doors playing Lamb of God, and we would just throw hands and have a good time. But in this situation, he wasn't there. Me and her cussing each other out, and one of the ladies that was there with her kids next to this playground ended up calling the cops on us. We're 16 years old, having a domestic dispute in this neighborhood. And so we all jump in our vehicles to leave. Well, I jump in my truck, and I'm pulling out of the cul-de-sac, and to the left of me, I see my buddy. I'll leave him unnamed. He's my buddy now. He wasn't then, obviously. But I seen him kind of pop around the bushes. And so I jump out the truck. We go tussling down the hill. All my other friends take off. And all I remember is as we're tussling, the cops pull up. We're getting yelled at, face down, hands behind your back, whatever. They're breaking up a fight. They're doing their jobs. And I hear a noise, a crash type of deal. And the guy I was fighting started saying, "Tyler, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Yeah, you damn right you're sorry," just because I'm a big man getting arrested. And he's like, "No, your truck." And I look up, and my truck had ran into the police car. When I jumped out, I guess I had seen red, and I didn't put it in park. And I had already been on probation for breaking and entering. That's another part of my story that I left out. As a teenager, I got in a lot of trouble when I was getting kicked out of those schools.
Right.
And once I got kicked out of alternative school, I just sat at home getting high and doing stupid shit. So my first charge was actually at 15 years old for breaking and entering. So this was kind of like the last straw. Now I'm kicked out of all the schools. I've already been to alternative school. What else do they do with a 16-year-old kid? And so I show up to court, essentially to defend myself and try to prove that my mom was an unfit mother and that my stepdad was an unfit father, even though I had this beautiful life, everything that I had.
Right. You had to blame it on somebody.
Had to, right? Always. It was never my fault. It was everybody else's fault. I was just dealt the shitty cards by this God that I'm not good enough for, if there is one, that small chance, right? And so ended up going to court with my buddy Jeremy, and I want to say Doodah might have been there. I can't remember, but Jeremy had a mohawk going, and we looked like complete morons. We were hungover, probably smelled like alcohol and weed from the night before. And I show up to court, and I have all these printed out pages of my medicine cabinet because my mom used to work at my mom and my dad were on medication, so they had a medicine cabinet.
Right.
And so I'm taking pictures of all these pill bottles, just going to show them how they're just all drug addicts and they just need to be better parents and all this stuff.
Right.
And so the judge is like, "Where are you going to live if you get emancipated?" Because at the time I was right around turning 17. And so I was like, "With him." And I pointed the guy with the mohawk. And the judge asked him if any of them could pass a drug test. And they said yes. Well, the judge said, "Bailiff, take them to get drug tested." So they walked out the door. Jeremy kicked the door. And then literally within 30 seconds, they all walked back in. And the bailiff said, "Your Honor, they can't produce a sample today." And so right then and there, we went back and forth. And I actually got kind of spunky with the judge. Little man syndrome kicked in. And the judge, just like you see in the movie, slammed his gavel down and said, "Take him away." And they shackled me right there. And 16 years old. No shit. Shackled me by the legs and by the hands behind my back, escorted me out a door into this white van and drove me to the Department of Children's Services. A little bit later, my mom comes, and I'm sitting in this room, and it's on a Friday. I'll never forget, because they were trying to find me temporary placement in a foster home for the weekend until they could send me to a lockdown facility until I turned 18. So I was essentially going to be a ward of the state until I was an adult. They found me, well, first when my mom gets there, my mom, I'll never forget her face. She was crying and she was hurt. And I just remember calling her every name in the book, and I told her that I hated her and it was all her fault. And I probably said some really nasty, hurtful things to her. And these tissues are here for a reason, guys, because I'm a crier. So then they take me and they grab me some Burger King or McDonald's, I can't remember, and they take me to this home just for the weekend. Right. And that night we sat down and I had my meal, and it was just a regular home. They took juvenile justice kids, were kids like me in trouble, but they also took in regular foster kids, and it was like a balance. But it was a family environment. There was just two other kids there. One of them was a child. Great people, Tammy and Tony Myers, I believe. I haven't talked to them in a long time, but over the course of that weekend, they sat down and they had meals together, and they did family things together. They went out together. They played in the yard together. They did things like that. And I remember when we sat down that second night and had dinner together, I cried because I had never had that in my life.
Right.
We just kind of fended for ourselves because, again, my mom worked her butt off. She always, I think growing up, she had 3 jobs at one point. And then when she started working in bariatrics and weight loss, she was traveling for work all the time and doing all this stuff. So sitting down and having that moment was super powerful. And I think that Tony specifically, but Tammy too, my foster parents, they saw that there might be an opportunity, that maybe I wasn't a bad kid. I just needed a little bit of love.
Right.
Right. And so Tony said that when we go to the office on Monday, I'm going to try to see if we can give you a chance here, if you're willing. I was willing because I didn't want to go to a damn lockdown facility.
No, hell
You
no.
know what I'm saying? And so we went and they approved it. And I stayed there for 2 years. I was able to get my GED. I was able to go back to that alternative school and tell my story a couple of times. And one of the funny thing is one of the times I was there was a black lady, and I can't remember her name. It's one of those people that you call her an angel, or they have different words for it that God put in your life and you don't even realize it. And I remember at the end of my stories one time, she thanked me for my story and talking to a lot of the people I went to high school with that I knew in that alternative school.
Yeah.
And I was doing well, got my GED, all these things. And I remember her saying, you didn't mention anything about God or higher power or anything. I was just wondering how you stay clean or stay strong or whatever she said. I don't remember. Because at the time, I still hadn't registered that I had a drinking or a drug problem. I was just an asshole, living the life that the hand that was dealt me.
Right.
Playing the part. And so ultimately, looking back on that now, she might have been a woman in recovery. And that was like one of the first times kind of the seeds were planted. I'd been to church and stuff off and on my life, but it wasn't something that we did quite often. But anyways, I did really well. And I started working at a meat market even before I became a menace. And during that time, I stole from them. I stole a handgun from them. And part of me, when I got arrested at 16 to lessen my sentence, was to return that handgun. So I had to do that. And then when I got out, I called Chris Houston's Meat and Produce in Mount Juliet, and I asked him about my job, and he said, you stole my pistol, you son of a bitch, and he hung up on me. He ended up hiring me years later, or that might have happened after he hired me after state's custody. I don't remember. But one thing that I want to mention about Houston's is they hired me at 14 years old, and they put me to work, and they instilled a really, really, really good work ethic in me.
Right.
And so I've always had a work ethic because of that. And I get a lot of that from my mom too, but got out of state's custody. Like I said, was doing really well, job, GED, all that. Got enrolled into a program that I don't even remember what it's called, but they enrolled me into this concrete program. And I'm not going to go deep into that, but I want to say that the gentleman teaching that class, I used to give him a really hard time. And I would come in there high as shit every day, drunk, hungover, everything. And he was always drinking room temperature coffee, black room temperature coffee.
That's a man's man right
And
there.
well, I'll tell you what he is. He's an alcoholic. So one day I was like, he was getting on to us about something. I said, you must be an alcoholic. And he just stopped like a deer in headlights. And he said, as a matter of fact, I am. And that was another seed planted, right? Didn't even know at the time, but looking back now. And so turn 18, and there's a lot of stuff that happens between the age of 18 and 23. I'm going to talk about 2 things, tell you what the end looked like, and then try to wrap it up from there. When I got out, I was 18. It was probably 6 months outside of being a free adult now. Right in the world. I got my first DUI. Didn't make it very long. Right. Ultimately, from the time I was 18 to the time I turned 23, I was arrested around 20 times. Mostly short timer stuff. Driving on suspendeds, driving on revoked, DUIs. I got 3 DUIs in that time period. violation of probations, just left and right, man. Another thing that really impacted my life, I talked about Doug Duda, and he was my best friend. I probably at one point considered him more than a brother than my own brother, you know, because we had a rocky relationship,
Yeah.
you know, too. We're close now, but August 1st, 2010, we went to Mayhem Fest and we saw a bunch of our favorite bands. It was a long trip. We had done a bunch of substances on the way there, a bunch of substances while we were there. We drank our asses off. It was probably one of the best days of my life. And me and Doug had some kind of issues before that. While we were rolling balls on Molly, we were sitting on top of this field at the concert, and we did what we call in recovery make amends, and we kind of cleaned up each other, you know, said sorry, and we love each other and all that stuff. I didn't know that that was going to be probably the last conversation that I had with him. And so we go and we party and we're driving home, and our driver had time to sober up, but we had been up for, I mean, a whole day at Mayhem Fest. It was so hot. Girls were walking around with waters of ice and cups between their chests, and there were people were hosing each other. Like it was miserably hot.
Yeah.
And so our driver ended up falling asleep at the wheel. There were 6 of us in the vehicle. We were in a white Expedition, and I was in the middle row, and there was a third row in the back, and we were lounging. Some of us had to work the next day. We were sleeping bags, blankets. The only people that were even buckled up were the driver and the passenger, Jeremy and Jared. I remember us swerving a little bit, no big deal, but then I remember my buddy Jonathan, who was Jeremy's little brother, say, "Oh shit." And I look up and I see out the windshield nothing but green grass. And Jonathan went to jump. Jared overcorrected. And then the next thing I remember was like everything went black. But I could feel my body. It didn't hurt, but I could feel my body being thrown around this vehicle. And I don't know how long it lasted for, but I'll tell you that we were going probably 70 to 90 miles an hour. And the truck driver said that if he didn't stop when he did, he would have killed all of us. And that we flipped somewhere around 20 something times.
Oh, damn.
And when we came to, so when we first started the wreck, we were in the far right-hand lane coming back from Atlanta facing Nashville. When I came to, I was in the back seat behind me, floorboard. And so I got up and I look around and the vehicle's empty, except for the 2 people wearing their seatbelts. And I don't know how long I'd been out. I've never been in an accident like that. All the windows are busted out, but we're in the far right-hand lane. I don't know how bad things are. I jump out the back window, and my friend Hobo, that tells you the type of people I hung out with at the time, and I'll keep his name private for other reasons, but we'll just call him Hobo. His feet were completely mangled where he was dragged. And then I run around, and I find Jonathan under the car, unresponsive. And then Jared and Jeremy are in the vehicle. Jared's jammed in. His arm is stuck, so he can't move without help. And then Jeremy gets out. So it's just me and him. And at this point, I'm looking for Doug. I don't know how long we've been out. At this point, traffic on both sides of the interstate are backed up further than you can see. All you can see is headlights. It's probably 2 in the morning-ish, 1 in the morning. The news article is still out there. It's just hard to find because it's been so many years. But we shut down that interstate for like 6 hours going both ways. While I'm looking for Doug, I'm calling people. I'm finding cell phones, water bottles, clothes. And the people that were talking to us thought that there were clothes being thrown out of the vehicle. But what were actually being thrown out of the vehicle were all my friends.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that it wasn't me. I didn't have hardly but a scratch. I'm still trying to find Doug. In my mind, I'm trying to tell myself that Doug went looking for help. Because, again, I don't know how long I was out.
Right.
So I start screaming doodah. There's people walking up and down the interstate. We're picking up trash and all the stuff from the car. And probably half a football field away from me, there's a black man. I can still see him today. Well, I couldn't see him, but he was holding a flashlight. I remember his face. And he said, "Over here." And, like, my body took off before my mind could think. And I got probably a couple feet away. And Doug was laying there. And I thought he was still alive because he was making noises and stuff. And I know that's kind of graphic, but it's just what really happened. It wasn't a pretty sight. Ultimately, what happened was he was ejected from the vehicle. We flipped to him, landed on top of him, and kept flipping. The troopers kept talking about they were life flighting Jonathan. But at this point, I had seen Jonathan try to fight 6 paramedics in an ambulance. So I'm like, why are we life flighting Jonathan? What about Doug? What about Doug? And I just kept asking about Doug. And And it didn't make sense why we weren't life flighting Doug when he was the only one unresponsive and all this stuff. And finally, I explained this scene like the scene in The Notebook, except it wasn't raining and we weren't kissing. But the trooper looked at me and he said, "Son, you saw exactly what I did." And I lost it because I knew I'd lost my best friend.
Right.
And again, that abandonment, that rejection.
Right back.
Fuck you, God. You're going to take never let me meet my dad. And that's the other thing is like my whole life not knowing my dad, I tried to write him letters and I was told that he didn't want it. I didn't know the full story.
Yeah.
And so now my dad, I'm not good enough for school. I'm not good enough for God. I'm not good enough for my dad. All my friends are getting taken away from me from this loving God that I'm supposed to know. And so that was just it. I don't know if you ever cross a line into full-blown addiction or alcoholism, or if you're born with it or adapt with it. I know it's a progressive disease. We talk about it. But that next 2 years, if there was a line, I pole vaulted over that son of a bitch. I drank every night. I lived a life of guns and fighting and group sex and chaos. Let's see. So that was another big moment.
That 2 years, though, that came out of a place of anger and just hurt.
Bro, we used to, so talking about being a menace and just being an asshole, we went to a hospital one night, and because we were drunk, they didn't want to help us, so we stole one of their wheelchairs. And so we would just get drunk in my apartment and roll around in this wheelchair. This is how sick I got over those 2 years. We had a picture of Doug, and we would put it in that wheelchair, and we would get plastered drunk and take group photos with him like he was still alive. That was hard for me, and it still is, because he was so young. Anyways, and there's a whole lot more story. I wish I could talk about just him, but I want my story to be impactful, so there's a lot I want to get to recovery, okay? In February of 2014, at this point, I had an apartment that I was renting a room from this girl, but prior to that, I was really just homeless, dude. I was couch surfing,
Right.
trying to find a place to live. I had a drug dealer who most of the time had uppers, and I liked downers, but if he had it and nobody else had the downers, then I was going to see him. And if I didn't have a place to stay, he lived in a really nasty house. The carpets were discolored everywhere from piss and dogs and things like that. The only furniture in that place was in his bedroom, and it was a mattress on the floor and a TV and an Xbox. And I used to sleep in the corner of his living room, empty with no furniture. Just shit like that. But at the time, at the end of it, was renting a room with a girl who I went to high school with. I won't mention her name either, just out of respect for her and her privacy, but I was renting a room from her, and we were doing drugs together, and I was literally financially abusing my godmother, Avis. Anytime I needed drugs and couldn't find it, I had every excuse in the world on why I needed $100 or $50 or anything to do whatever, and I was taking advantage of her. One night, I was sitting there doing my thing, we were crushing up, and there was a bang at the door. And it wasn't like a normal bang. It was like a fucking 5-0 bang. You know what I'm saying?
You're like, oh.
Doom, doom, doom. And so I creep over to the hole, and I'm looking through the peephole, and there's nobody there. I'm like, somebody's probably fucking with us. It was an apartment complex. So we go back to crushing up our thing, doing our thing, and there's another bang. Boom, boom, boom. Tyler Bell, Metro County Police Department, open up. I knew when they said my name, followed by police department, I was going to jail. They're not just coming to say hello and check on me. I didn't know, or maybe I did, I can't remember, is I had a warrant, and that's why they were there. They had been looking for me, and they got me. So they took me to jail. I had no intention on getting sober. Had no interest on being in recovery. Didn't think that I had a problem. I just thought that I was dealing with life the best way that I knew how, and that was by doing drugs.
Yeah.
And drinking. And I had been court ordered to go to like 12-step meetings in the past, like when I was in that juvenile era, when I was in group home and stuff.
Yeah.
And I would get high before I went to those things, which is why I wound up in state's custody. None of that stuff, it was all bullshit. You're going to pray, hold hands, and talk about Jesus, okay? And that wasn't my jam. I get arrested, and I'm in jail, and I have this moment, right? Our literature in the anonymous program that I'm a part of talks about we have this moment of clarity. And for me, that moment of clarity is when God slows me down just enough in that moment that I'm able to feel that little, you were talking about your brother wooing on your neck. I can feel God just a little bit. Anyways, I was in jail and I was on the phone, and I'll never forget. It was one of those moments like when I saw my biological father for the first time that I'll just never forget. I remember where the chairs were, what color they were, the TV, like where everything was, and it was on a wall at Davidson County in Harding Place. They had shipped me from there to do time in Harding Place, and I was looking at some prison time because of all my charges, and didn't know what was going to happen. But this time there was no bailout.
Right.
This time all the bridges were burned. And I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and in Wilson County, we ate good back then. I don't know what y'all eat now, but we used to eat biscuits and gravy in Wilson County. So I knew I was going to get fed good if I got arrested there. But in Harding Place, we got bologna sandwiches. I don't even remember what we had for breakfast, and I think they skipped a meal. I can't remember. It was bad. And I was telling her that because my family's a foodie. We like to eat. And my sister was born with growth hormone deficiency, so she's not fully like mentally disabled or handicapped, but there's a lot that she can't. She'll always need somebody to care for her, but she also loves food. And so we were talking, and she said something along the lines of, "Why don't you come down here and live with me and mom, and we'll cook and whatever forever." And I just remember that moment. It hit me that like I am going to die. If I'm lucky, I'm going to die. Or I'm going to keep living this life that I'm already comfortable with, which is fucked up to be comfortable
Right.
with. And so there was this big black guy that walked around the jail, and he would do the prayer circle. And the prayer circle, for those of you who don't know, is you circle up in jail before bed. Some people do scripture, some people just pray, and then they clap out and everybody goes to bed. Well, I didn't want no part of that. But there was something attractive about this gentleman because during the day, people who were struggling would go sit on his bunk and they would talk to him. And he was just another inmate. Big old black guy, super intimidating. And Nashville was a whole different animal jail for me because I was used to Wilson County, 23-1. You're not out that much. Like it was, I was in an open pod.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm young and I'm a little intimidated. Let's be real, right? I'm not a big man. But something drew me to go talk to this guy, and I went and go talk to him and told him my life story. And he said, "Man, you should probably go to a fellowship meeting." I won't say which one. And I was flabbergasted that son of a bitch was accusing me of being an alcoholic and a drug addict like everybody else my entire life, right? And he was like, "Man, but check it out. If you go, you get out of your pod for a while, you can move around, see other things. It's not bad." And so I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So I go to this stupid meeting, and it's just like the stupid movies. We're all in orange, sitting in a circle. And I know now that those two guys that brought that meeting to that jail were part of a service structure in one of these fellowships. And if it wasn't for that, then I might not have found recovery.
Right.
So I don't remember what happened during that meeting, but I remember at the very end, they did a Q&A, and the first question I asked is how can I do this thing if I don't believe in God? And they started naming off all these inanimate objects that could be my higher power. It was all silly shit. And mind you, I'm 23 years old and a smart ass.
Right.
So when they're like light switch, Coke machine, volleyball, lamp, all these things, I'm like, okay, Coke machine's my higher power. There's a part in the literature of the fellowship I'm in that says when we took such a position, it's in step 3 talking about surrender, right?
Right.
When we took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. I didn't realize, and I don't think a lot of people realize, we do 1, 2, and 3 all the time before we even get into recovery. Nothing really happens.
Absolutely.
No action happens until we get to step 4,
Yeah.
other than damage and chaos.
Yeah. Step 4
You know what I'm
is terrible.
saying? So, I didn't realize that what I was doing was a step 3. I was making a decision to go to this meeting. I was making a decision to ask a question. I was slowly opening that door for God's light to come in. I didn't realize, and I still didn't call it God at the time, and my smart ass chose a Coke machine for my first higher power until I realized praying to a Coke machine was silly as shit.
Right.
So then all sorts of remarkable things followed. So the next day, I get a case manager. I had never had a case manager in jail because I was always a short timer. Well, this case manager calls me in. She's like, "Do you want to go to treatment?" Again, I'm offended. You want me to go to treatment?
Right.
And so I end up, she says, "Well, you can do this thing called a furlough, and you can go to treatment and do your jail time in treatment." And I was like, "Sign me up. I'm in. I'm a drug addict." And so off to treatment I went. And I don't remember a lot that happened in treatment. I remember that I left as a group leader. I worked in the kitchen the whole time. I stole glass bottle Mountain Dews out of storage and shared them with my roommates. I got baptized while I was there because it felt right because everybody else was doing it, and things just started happening.
You didn't
But
have like an aha moment while you was in
no,
rehab?
not in treatment, man. Not one
Really?
time. Not one time. There was, as a matter of fact, maybe that's a little too far. I had a discrepancy, a medical condition in an area that's use your
Oh,
imagination.
you already told me this. Yeah, yeah, we got this.
We gotta go there, but my
that
counselor would not help me, and so I wrote him like this long. It was several pages of what I thought about him and how he was a terrible therapist and he's killing people and all this stuff. And I didn't even have the guts to give it to him. I slid it under his door. And then a couple weeks later, he comes to me and he brings me in his office and he's like, "Listen, you don't." I'd gotten to a place where I was comfortable in treatment. Right, it's the first time in my life that I was feeling my emotions again, which is not a bad thing, but it was overwhelming, and I was safe there.
Yeah.
Right, I knew that I was safe there. I didn't feel like I had to use. I didn't feel like I had to impress anybody.
Because you're in that bubble.
Right. And so I wanted to join the work program and just stay there forever in this little bubble. And he's like, for whatever reason, I don't remember, you don't qualify for housing. So it's pretty much sat me in front of a computer and start calling. I'm just calling all these people. You know, you got to have money, which I didn't have. I didn't have anything. My godmother had sent me a couple care packages. I mean, I had a box full of stuff that could fit in a Kroger bag. So when I tell my story, I mean, essentially, you know, not all the way, but mostly I was 23 and homeless with a Kroger bag full of clothes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I get on Google and I'm calling these places, deny, 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 or you don't have this, you don't qualify, whatever the case may be. And then I call this one place and this guy answers. He said, "Friend of Bill's." And it was BJ Booth. And I give him the spiel. He's like, "You don't need none of that shit. Just come on." And so I show up at the house and I'll never forget it. I knock on the door and it was there in Hendersonville. And it was a halfway house. And I knock on the door, and this guy, big heavy set guy, opens the door. He's wearing camo Crocs, camo shorts, camo tank top. I was like, Jesus Christ. And he says, "Hi, I'm Chase. I'm the manager." Well, come to find out, Chase was not the manager. He had been there for 2 weeks. And I bring up Chase because it's probably the first healthy relationship with another man that I've ever had in my life, maybe another person. I'll tell you another thing before I get there is I had this while I was in treatment. My godmother was the only one. You know, my mom at this point, she was afraid to answer the phone to get a call that I was dead.
Right.
My godmother, I was just manipulating and all this stuff, but she stuck by me at every step of the way. And she came to see me in treatment, and she was sending me care packages, doing all this stuff. Well, she's the one that I had to get dropped back off to jail to get checked in to be booked out and discharged or released. And so I did that. And then I went to my godmother picked me up, and she took me to Sam's to go get some stuff so that I could, when I went to the house, I had what I needed to get started back at life. And when I got there, she was acting super strange and said she had to go out to her car for a minute. Somebody she knew was out there, something weird. I didn't even pick up on it that it was weird. I was just grateful to be out of jail and rehab and scared about where I was going because sober living's also new to me. And I get somebody keeps bumping into me, and Avis had already come back, and they keep bumping into me, and I'm getting ready to turn around and be like, "What the fuck are you bumping into me for?" And it's my brother. And we both lost it, dog. I'm talking hugging each other, crying in the middle of the store, and he was like, "I'm going to take you the rest of the way." And for the next 2 or 3 years, I was on probation, having to check in. I was on state probation in Nashville and county probation in Wilson County, and I had to check into both every month. And my brother would drive from Laverne once a month and pick me up and take me to go pay my shit and take my drug test and bring me back to the halfway house. And I love him so much for that. And, you know, that's how we kind of started rebuilding our relationship. And there's more to that, too. But that was powerful. So then I get to the halfway house, and there's this big redneck and all this camo shit. And I'm like, what have I done? I'm living in a house. We got to smoke cigarettes inside. The walls were yellow. I mean, I'm in a house with, you know, 10, 11, 12 other dudes. Like, I mean, it was crazy. It was chaos. But it was probably, and I bitched that whole year and a half that I was there. But I will tell you, looking back on it, life was so simple. I got to flip burgers, and I got to go to meetings, and it was probably the easiest and most joyful, happiest experience of my entire life.
That's about the time we met then.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting that. So I got there on a Friday. Monday, I had to go turn myself in. Had to do 7 days, but I had to get so the rules at the house where you had to go to meetings, you had curfews, you had chores, you had whatever. But until you got a job, you had to be out every day from 8 to 4, 8 to 5, whatever it was, and you had to get a minimum of 10 applications, and you had to get a sheet signed by the manager that you talked to. So I'm riding my purple bike that I stole from the garage down the road here in Hendersonville, and the first place I pass is Sonic. But I managed restaurants and things like that, so I'm like, I'm too good for that. I'm going to Texas Roadhouse is where I was headed. So I wound up going in, and I wanted to knock off Sonic because even though I wasn't going to take the job if they offered it, I was going to have that check mark so I could get back to the house a little early. I sat there. I was still wearing my shoes that I wore in jail. And Ashley Mullins was the one who interviewed me, and she said, when can you start? And I was like, and I was honest with her. I told her my whole deal, and I'm like, well, like I said, I'm living in a halfway house. I don't really have anything going on. She's like, so you can start today. And at that point, I she caught me so off guard. It was like, yeah, and Ashley and Sonic was just as big as my recovery in the beginning, and well, a lot. I mean, just as big as an impact on me and my trajectory changing in my life as my anonymous fellowships, my meetings, my sponsors, my people were. Because as a 23-year-old broken person who feels like they're not good enough for nobody, including God, including himself, who feels unloved, right? And for somebody like her to just hire me on the spot after I just poured out everything that I'd done, right? And then 3 months later get pregnant and give me keys not only to the safe but to the store. That instilled a purpose in me that I thought I never had. That I was good enough, that I was okay. And then as things go, I mean, I worked for her for a stint, and then worked in treatment, and then came back and worked for her brother, and Sonic was good to me. The Mullins and the Rainers were very good to me. People think I bought my house working in treatment. You don't make money in treatment, baby.
No.
I bought my first house by working 70 hours a week at Sonic, baby.
My 3 houses I bought all came from Sonic. Hey.
So that's how we met Juice. Juice he was an operator in Springfield. For 20 something years, I think. And so he was a part of our franchise group, and that's how we actually met, which is a beautiful serendipitous moment. And
big words.
So I did that. See, where do I go from here?
Well, wherever you want to go, bro. We got all night.
All right. So I'll speed it up here. A lot of things happened in the last 11 years that have been absolutely beautiful. I got to work in treatment, and I made some mistakes in my first treatment job that ended up getting me fired. And I thought it was my dream job. It was working with adolescents, and I was completely devastated. But the weird thing is, and the way this program works, is it rewired my brain. And the first thing that happened to me as I was leaving after being terminated was I called my sponsor. And my sponsor came and sat with me 3 hours until the meeting started to make sure that I was going to be okay. And I humbled myself, and I went back to Sonic until something happened to my brother. And my brother needed to go to treatment. And I had to drive him to the same treatment center that I went to like 7 or 8 years before. And I knew right then and there I knew what my calling was, right? I needed to get back into treatment. I got back into working into treatment. I was making really decent money. It was essentially a sales position, doing admissions, and I got to work from home. And it was a tough job on me balance-wise because I'm a people person, and it had me isolating, but it gave me the flexibility to start a business.
Yeah.
And so I got sober with a handful of people, man. There was probably 8 or 9 of us when we first got sober at that house here in Hendersonville at BJ's house. Several of those people are dead, including Chase. Most recent, we lost Lucas this last November. That was really tough. One of the things I want to say about Chase is when Chase passed, I was the one that called his aunt to let her know because I was too afraid to call his mom. And his work called me just because they knew I was his roommate. And I want to go back to just saying about the healthy relationship thing. So I believe the steps, right? The 12 steps are all about relationships. My first sponsor told me that before he relapsed. And they're about relationships with yourself, God, and other people. And that idiot that wore all the camo, we not only got to be in the same house together for over a year, but we got to share the same room together, which is very rare. But we talked everything from war stories and girls and women and jobs and money and this to we started praying together on our knees every night. We started talking about God. We started talking about recovery. We started talking about being of service. We started taking meetings into a juvenile detention center, just doing things like that and getting really involved and immersed in recovery. And I fell in love, not with the meetings and the God and the bullshit, but I fell in love with this sense of belonging.
Yes. I get you on that one.
Right? Like my whole life, I was chasing this feeling of feeling unloved and not being good enough in the bottle and the joint and the pills and the dope and all that stuff. But what I realize now is what I was chasing was unconditional love. That sense of being accepted and wanted and needed and loved. And I had that totally backwards, right?
Yeah.
So when Chase passed, we got to be Paul. Well, first I got to speak at his funeral, and I chose to speak about what a friend was. And so I talked to Chase about being a good friend, or I talked at his funeral about being a good friend. I wrote a poem. It was really beautiful, and it was before ChatGPT, so it was legit.
Oh, it was legit.
But the two things that happened during that day is, one, his mom came up to us and she said, "Boys, I don't know how or why this program works, but I know that the year or so that my son worked this program, I had my son back. And the moment that he stopped, he didn't last 2 weeks." And then as we carried him out to his grave and we sat him down and we went to walk away, and all of us that were in the sober living were his pallbearers, right? We set him down on the thing, and we, as we went to step away, his sponsor stopped us. And he said, "Hold up, boys, let's close out Chase's last meeting with the Lord's Prayer." And so we circled around his casket and we closed out like we do our anonymous meetings with the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
And so now when we do the Lord's Prayer at meetings, I don't say it, I listen. And I try to hear every person's voice. I go around the circle and it's just a thing that I do. It's weird, I know.
It's really not weird. I like that, actually.
So the other thing, too, that I want to talk about is I'll get back into the work thing. So it allowed me to create a business. A couple people that are still sober, Cody, Byron, Marshall. Me and Marshall just decided that we wanted to go into maybe open up a sober living, give people the same opportunity and the same experience that BJ did for us after he passed. And I'm going to finish up by telling his story. So I'm going to skip over his passing and then go back to it. That'll be my ending. Me and Marshall we went to BJ's wife and we wanted to buy the Hendersonville house. We figured after he passed, she was going to sell.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to buy it because it was intimate. She had a cash buyer. We were able to get an offer, a letter from the bank saying that we could get the loan, but she had a cash offer, turnkey, and it just made sense for her. And she's been supportive in everything we've done. Kathy, I love you so much. And so me and Marshall just decided to open a house. And so that's how a Vision for You Recovery Homes was created. A few years prior, I'd worked with Justin Coggins with the Design for Living, and my first sponsee ever, who didn't stay sober when I was his sponsor, but thank God he's a miracle and sober today, Logan Terry with the Keith Dixon Foundation and Old Hickory Recovery. Logan had finally gotten sober in California, moved to Nashville. I connected him with Justin, and they created their housing. And so when me and Marshall were creating a Vision for You, they guided us every step of the way.
Right.
And so over the course of the last 2.5 years or so, we've gone from one house in Gallatin to 5 houses across the state. And between all of them, there's 50-ish beds.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to do. I got to a point where I wanted to quit that job and I wanted to be full-time housing. And I got approached by some guys that I went to church with 10 years ago. They asked me if I would meet them for breakfast. And I thought they were going to have me do an intervention on somebody. And when I got there, it was Mario from Uncle Ched's.
Oh, yeah.
And Ched was there. And Mario's the one that set it up. I didn't know Ched was going to be there, so I was completely thrown off. And they introduced me to Bram. And they essentially wanted to utilize our housing for this idea of path. And we weren't ready for that. We wanted to keep it simple. We didn't want more hands in the pot. We wanted it to be long-term investment. And we wanted to do things our way that we knew worked for us.
Right.
We didn't want to change for anybody. Conversations kept happening, and they conned me into coming on board as director of programming here, and it's been an incredible experience. I get to bring on people that were impactful to my life early on, like Juice, that I've also been impactful in other ways in my recovery, and you can tell that in your own time. We've been able to build a really good team here. There's a lot of slimy shit that happens in the housing and the treatment industry, and we wanted to do something different. And has it slow rolled us a bit? Absolutely. Do we know what we're doing?
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
We have a clinical director who drives this bus, thank God. Dr. E is amazing. But to watch us sitting in a living room or kitchen of Bram and Kenya and interviewing people and creating policies and procedures and doing all this stuff that we have no idea what we're doing, to now coming into the office on a Monday or Tuesday morning and hearing laughter from the group room is probably one of the most incredible things that God's allowed me to accomplish in my life.
Absolutely.
And and the good thing about like working with this group of people is, and Ched sets that tone of being a servant leader, and that's something that I live by. Ched wants to invest in others, which is why he's created different wings of his enterprise, and he's given us the opportunity, a path, and which enabled the opportunity for the morning juice, and we're working on some other things to be continued. Stay tuned. But we're doing all these things because we want to reach a population who typically doesn't get this type of care.
Absolutely.
But also doing things that aren't slimy, that are ethical, but that are of quality, that really make a difference and an impact on people's life, not just with substance abuse, but with mental health. And I think that the team that we're building, though it's been slow, it's of quality and it's strong. And
it's passionate.
And it's passionate. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about this environment here at Path, and even with the vision for you, is it's not driven by numbers, it's driven by passion.
Yep. Amen.
And so I've got a beautiful life today. I have a beautiful wife who's our front desk assistant. She's a front desk girl.
She's awesome.
Let's just remember that she's not the boss, at least not here at Path, maybe at home. But I've got a beautiful daughter who I always wanted a daughter, never thought I would have it. When she got pregnant and then we found out it was a girl, life-changing for me.
And when I hear her on the phone, she's hilarious. Like, I haven't got to meet her in person yet, but on the phone I hear her and I'm like, I've got this girl. I could really get in trouble with this little girl.
Her first words are going to be, fucking damn it. Because that's my daughter. She gets it, honestly. So I know we've kind of talked about a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that I wish I could have touched on, and I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But if I could get one message out there from this podcast, because I think that the idea of this podcast is if I could just help one person, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I know that's the thing, and we're getting calls, and we're getting DMs, and we're getting all these things. So if I could help one person, then I would like this message to be heard. And it goes back to BJ Booth. And a lot of my experiences are within fellowships that, again, I want to respect. So I'm just going to keep it broad and generic. But BJ Booth, on his deathbed, well, so he got sick. We'll back up just a little bit. So he got sick, and a bunch of us who got sober together went and surprised him at one of his Lebanon houses. And BJ he'd have mandatory meetings. You had to be at work or dead, and they'd be 3 hours long. And so you bet your ass every Friday night I was working, because I didn't want to hear that shit. You're a liar, cheater, and a thief, and you need to stop taking from your family. You've been taking your whole life. How many pigeons you have? How many people you helping? And I'm like, shut the fuck up, you know? But when we found out he was sick, we went and we had that meeting with him. We called him after he probably just had a 3-hour meeting with that house. And so he welcomed us right back in, and we had the best 3-hour meeting with BJ that we ever had. And I don't remember a whole lot that was talked about, because we talked about a lot about business, about life, about recovery, about everything. But he said something along the lines, and Marshall kills it. He remembers all the words. I'm going to butcher it. But he said something about, when you come to recovery, you give up all your wants and desires so that God can give you all your hopes and dreams.
Yes.
And God has done way more than that for me. So BJ got better, right? BJ was sick, but he got better. It gets worse if you want to cry. Here you go.
Am I getting ready to cry?
Maybe.
Okay.
So, so BJ got fast forward a year, and we get the call that BJ's sick again, and that he's probably not going to make it through the night. So we'll probably come see him. And I went with Marshall because I couldn't go alone. And I'll never forget it. BJ used to tell this stupid ass story. All of his stories drove me crazy. He used to tell this story about being at peace with God and at peace with life and being fully content, right? When our book says there is one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him right now. I always thought that meant you have to find him now or you're doomed to hell. But what it means is God is right here, right now, in this moment. Find God right now, right here, where my feet are, right? And so while we were at the hospital with BJ, BJ used to tell this story. Let me tell the story. He used to tell a story about this guy that was jumping out of airplanes. He was trying to get good at jumping out of airplanes, and he got good, and he was going to do his first jump by himself. And his family was down and watching him from the ground. And he jumps out of the airplane, and shoot, won't work. But he was so at peace with all the hard work that he had done, and that he knew that he was going to die, but he was going to go be with God. And so he just closed his eyes and opened his wings and just fell to his death. That is the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. If I'm falling from the sky and my parachute don't work, you bet your ass I'm screaming and cussing and hollering and dancing and running and running where? I'm falling.
You're trying to run in the air.
We're dying. I'm freaking the hell out. And until I got to see BJ do that in person, not jump out of an airplane.
Right.
But when we went to see BJ in his last moments on his deathbed, he had the biggest fucking smile on his face. His stomach was bloated so bad from, I forget what he had. It was some type of illness. It was medical, of course. You know, we're boohoo crying. I'm so fucked up. I got snot dripping to the floor. Like, we're trying to hold each other. Kathy had kind of stepped over away to give us time, and a lot of people were in and out. And he was just telling us how happy he was. And I'm like, I remember to the point where I said, BJ, it's okay to be upset, or it's okay to be sad. And he was like, no. The last 27 years, or however many years he was sober, I can't remember. He said, the last X amount of years that I've been sober has been in overtime because I should have died before I found recovery. And he said, I've lived a good life because I didn't stop helping God's kids. And he said, you both can live a good life too if you don't stop helping God's kids. And so right then and there in that moment, intentionally, I made it my mission to not stop helping God's kids. I don't give a fuck if you have insurance. I don't give a damn if you have money. I'm not one of those people who's going to turn you away or hang up on you. I'm going to find you something. And I can't help everybody, but I'm going to fucking give it my all, and it doesn't always stick, but that's not my business. That's God's business.
Right.
I'm just here to play the role that he assigns, and it's tough.
It is.
And so if any message is heard from this story of redemption or growth or change, there's a lot of people I wish I could name drop, a lot of stories that I wish I could tell because I've had a lot of God moments in recovery, but those are some of the most impactful in my life. And if the one thing that is heard in this podcast today is I want people to know to redefine success, because it's not about money. If you're fucking unhappy, quit your job.
Amen.
I took a risk last year, pulled my 401k, thought I was going to DoorDash and run sober living, and God blessed me with an opportunity to help run what I hope to be one of the greatest treatment centers in the world one day. But my mission every day is, God, show me what you need from me and show me who I'm supposed to help. And sometimes it's not one of the people that are here at the center. Sometimes it's not one of the people at one of my houses. Sometimes it's just the clerk at 7 o'clock in the morning selling me my favorite steak biscuit at the Sudden Service in Portland, And I call
Sudden Service in Portland.
I call her by name and she smiles. And that could be the biggest change for her.
Right. And I agree with you on that one, because like before I found recovery 2 years ago, before Path, before podcast, before all this, I go in and out of places and wouldn't bat an eye at a person. Like, I was trying to get to Sonic, gotta make money, blah, 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 blah. Do I ever miss the money I made? Yes, because I spent a lot of dumb shit on it. But like, do I miss that life? Absolutely not. Like I tell people every day that I am happier, like beyond blessed and happy, having 2 cents left at the end of the month in my checkbook, having to beg you to get me gas to get me through the end of the month, than I ever was with $10,000 in my checking account. And it's just, like we talk about this all the time, man. It's just like watching the light bulb kick on in somebody is like, whew.
No better high, baby.
Like, there is nothing. Like, we got a client here, and I saw that light bulb kick on today, and I was just like, damn. Like, he's got it. Like, and, he even confessed. He said, when he first got here, he's like, I hope not drink no more. I don't want to drink no more. And I was like, he's starting to get it. And then today we was doing a check-in, and he's like, I will not drink no more. And I was like, it kicked. Like, he's 100% in now.
Yeah.
And when that shit happens and I get to experience that, for me, that's my God moments.
That's the pay.
That's the pay.
That's the pay,
That's
baby.
the pay. Like, I would do that shit for free to get that reaction.
100%.
And that's why we do this, is because, do we get the views we want yet? No. But they're going to come. All I care about is, since this podcast started and my connections to where I went to treatment at, this between the two, it's helped us get 3 or 4 people in here in the last month. And that's all I asked for. So as far as the mission with Path and with this podcast, it's doing exactly what I asked for. The funny part about me coming to work at Path, I had gotten pissed off at my previous job because they say I was too close to the clients, and I still believe that you can give hugs and tell people you love them, because that's what a lot of these people need at this time. And I came and met, I called T-Bell because I wanted to be the piss man at all of his houses, because I was trying to look for some part-time work. And I was like, T-Bell, I need to talk to you. I need some part-time work. He's like, I'm glad you called me. I need to talk to you ASAP. I got a proposition for you. I need to talk to you ASAP. So I came in here. This was December 6th. I will never forget it. Our first client was actually sitting on the couch. We got him out of the room for a minute. And you said, this is what we're doing. I'm an addict. I don't know shit about mental health. You're a mental health guy. Here's what I can offer to pay you. Bad news is you got 3 days, because if you don't take it, I got somebody else lined up that's going to take it. And so, like, I put ink to paper that day. So, like, I'm technically the first employee that was hired by Path. And, like, to be blessed with y'all helping me get this podcast started and me having God moments like meeting Brian in Home Depot, and all of a sudden now he's on here. And my former girl from Sonic, she's doing my social media marketing. And it's like, even when I was working at Sonic, I didn't believe in God at that time, but he was still using me as a vessel. Like, I was doing community work. I was doing stuff for schools. I was giving money under the table to help start the Bransford Center. But I didn't attach Sonic to it because I didn't want it to feel like it was an advertisement, because I did not want that. I wanted him to build it, And so, like, you're sitting here, and even though you're not believing in God, God's still working on you. And I got Mama Carol, who's my guardian angel. That woman saved me from killing myself in 2018 with a gun. When she said, honey, I need you to call me the next day, to being the person that called me when I was fixing to go back to the ranch, said, God's got a purpose for you. You got to go down there and find it. So, like, the last 2 years, when you talk about the God moments that's happened, the great thing about our field, and you will agree to this for sure, we don't give a fuck about money. I mean, we got to have enough to pay bills, but all we care about is saving people. Like I have seen these guys have a client call, and we ain't got no spot for them, but they don't just say, hey, I'm sorry, we can't help you. They're on the phone busting ass to try to find them another place to go, whether it's sober living, a different type of treatment center. They don't stop until we have them someplace to go. Do they show up? That's not on our plate. We did everything we were supposed to do to get them somewhere,
True.
And our jobs don't stop at 5 o'clock, even though people would love for us to stop at 5 o'clock.
No, that's the thing, dude. And 2 things. One, you mentioned God being there the whole time. dude, God was showing himself through Ashley and through Chris Houston and my whole life, my SRO,
Right.
Tim Bell, like all my principals, my teachers,
Yeah.
always was trying to slow me down and reach me, but I wasn't able to see it until I had that moment and I gave it up, right? And then the other thing too is like I was on my way to work this morning. That's how simple recovery is for me. It's a Christian song. Sometimes when I'm just needing to be positive, I just put it on K Love. It ain't like I'm a Jesus freak and I love God. I've got my own understanding and we can talk about that later. But the song was love God and love people.
I
It's
know that
that
song.
simple. Love God and love people.
I was actually this morning when you got here, I was in there listening to gospel music because my head wasn't in the right game, and I was trying to get myself motivated to teach today because it was one of my longer days. But like, yeah, 2 years ago, I would never. But now I'm like, you know what? I listen to some K Love every now and then. You know, like,
Bro, it's a blessing, man. And to have people too, like, Brian, are you able to pop in and show your face to
yeah,
people?
Brian, pop in here and show your face.
But I just want to say too, like Brian's not just an audio guy, man. Brian's made moves and been able to help us with some things at our housing with some issues with our yards. You know, like it's for me, recovery is all about connection. We talked about relationships, so it's all about who you can connect with. And here's the thing about recovery: I heard a guy who said he could never get over 60 days. He'd been in and out of recovery for years. This was in a podunk place in Texas where they still smoked in the meetings, and he said recovery is like the mafia. You'll have family anywhere you go, all over the world. But if you leave, you just might die.
Right.
But the thing is when you get into recovery, if you need an audio person, a yard person, a construction person, a lawyer, a cook, a chef, a therapist, whatever, recovery don't discriminate, just like addiction don't discriminate. You know what I mean? And so doing this, we get involved with people like Brian, who's not just here recording the podcast, but he's also going out of his way to do things for housing and for other organizations and nonprofits and veterans and things like that. So it's like I wanted path and I want a vision for you. Y'all were talking about unity in the community. It's one of the shirts, and I didn't wear it today, Juice. I'm sorry. I don't wear two shirts 2 days in a row.
It's okay.
But the thing is like my idea of recovery is we've got all this tit for tat competition bullshit, insurance money, this. We've got to have money to generate business. But if we can stop competing and stop calling people bad players or bad treatment centers, well, that treatment center may not have been good for one person,
But it probably saved
probably
100
helped
people.
over 100 or 1,000, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, instead of doing that, why don't we bring unity to the community? And that's why we use Brian to do like our kickball event. It's not about I can go to these networking events with these other treatment centers and shake hands with Zach Grace, shout out Zach Grace Freeman, or Kim and Troy from Hustle, shout out, right? I can do all these things and shake hands with all these people, but like we all know each other. We refer to each other every day. So our idea is like, yo, let's get loud and make these events fun and attractive, right? Not promote, but attract, because that's what we learn in recovery is to make recovery attractive and to bring all of us together, right, as organizations that are here to help people, and then use entertainment or social media or however we can. Joining the chamber has been absolutely amazing for us because it enables us to bring the people that need the service we offer to our fucking networking events so they know what all the resources are around that they have to offer. So if it's like, oh, Pat's not the right fit, but maybe Trioni is, right? Or whatever the case may be. But if we're just networking with the same people all the time and sending them down the rabbit holes of the internet, they're never going to find the help they need. They're going to die before they find that help.
Absolutely.
And so another message that I would like for everyone to hear is directly to providers that work in this field. We've got to act right and do different. And I've been loud about it on social media, but my program tells me principles before personalities, and to fit myself to be a maximum service to God and the people about me. And that's not just the people I serve, but the other organizations that I work with. There's no bad players to me. We all make mistakes. This is a really red tape industry, and it's just tough. And it sucks sometimes. But the people that are out here every day, I don't have to say your names that are on the front lines. Like, you're doing good work. Don't stop. But let's try to figure out a way to allow all of our resources to be available to people. That's how we're really going to make an impact.
Amen.
This tit for tat bullshit. You send me 3, I send you 2, or we don't take that, or they don't have enough this bull crap. Like, let's work together.
And there's no sense to having waiting like I know some treatment centers have waiting lists that are 20, 30 deep waiting for somebody to come in.
Bro, refer them.
Refer them to somebody else. Like, why are you going to make them wait a month to come to your treatment center? They might be dead within that month. Like, let's do the right thing by these people. Like,
You can't go out and relapse for 2 weeks anymore and come dragging your ass back in. You go out and relapse now, you're playing Russian roulette.
yeah, and with Brian coming on board, like, I know y'all see my face and y'all get tired of seeing my face probably, and that's cool because I'm going to scream recovery till the day I die. Like, it's just the way it is. My social media is nothing about but just recovery.
Your tag is Juicy Baby, right?
No, not Juicy Baby. But, like, this guy right here, I gave him my dream. I was like, this is my dream. And he was like, he could have said, no, fuck you, I work too much, I got a family. Like, he could have said anything. Instead, this dude said, let's fucking do it. Hey, I told him, and then he called me back. He either texted me that night or the very next day. He was like, I'm in. He's like, I believe in what you're wanting to do. Like, when you said to me that you didn't do this you don't want this for money, you want this for the people. He's like, I'm in. If we never get paid off this motherfucker, I don't care. And this dude puts in hours on my podcast. True. He has to do editing. He was talking to 2 treatment centers today by himself. Like, dude's out there, like, he knows I'm here working. He's working my podcast, y'all. Like, he does a lot of the work, and bringing Abby on to help with the social media side to take some of the pressure off of him. Like, I can't be me without Path, Brian, and Abby. Like, I just can't. Whew. But, like, we are going to help more people. Like, this is going to get where it needs to go.
We're just getting started, dog. My sponsor always used to tell me when I would have something good happen in my life, you're barely scratching the surface.
Right.
Barely scratch the surface.
And I believe in what we're doing at Path and with the podcast, because where we're starting to get treatment centers to come on and talk about their stories on the podcast, that's opening the doors to where I'm able to add more people to the resources on my website page, which is starting to, like, I have treatment centers reaching out to me now to come talk to them.
Let's go.
Like when I went to Recovery Unplugged last week, and it's like T-Bell's and Bram's dream to where we were all working together. My podcast is kind of starting to do that to where it's like breaking doors down to let us all start working together. But like, if it wasn't for this cat right here beside me, man, like, I don't know where I'd be at, because I damn sure couldn't afford to pay somebody to do what the fuck he's doing. Because I promise you, this dude's putting 20, 30 hours a week on this podcast. Like, he busts his ass for me. Like, he makes me look good, but like, he's doing a lot of the damn work behind the scenes. And, sometimes he needs to get on camera and get recognized for that stuff, because he's a beast.
That's it. So we're going to shout out Morning Juice
Pod,
A Vision for Your Recovery Homes,
Path Recovery.
If you need help, call Wink. Like you wink at somebody.
There you go. Shout out your website. Shout out your stuff.
Brian G326 Productions.
Hey, he's good. He's got some commercials out there already. Y'all check him out. He's still new to the game, but he's getting better every fucking day. I promise you. Y'all don't even realize we got Easter eggs on every episode that we've done. We're going to go over them in November. So, like, he does something special to every episode. So, like, to see if anybody catches it. If y'all have anybody out there that needs help, reach out to Path. You can reach out to me on my website, morningjuicepod.com. All you got to do is just put your name, email address. It comes directly to me. I can get it to the people it needs to go to right away. Check us out on YouTube at The Morning Juice. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Play, Apple Podcasts at Morning Juice Pod. And with that being said, we love you, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.